the pink mask of dancing girl. My gut feeling is that she's going to be a hockey player, not a dancer, but you could be wrong. Whitney was the dancer. But the Getzloffs, they were hockey players. So you never know. You never know. The first reading today from Acts is a very interesting reading. Okay, it's something we don't often remember. We remember all the miracles of Jesus and all those stories in our Bible books as children, and all the miracles that he did. But this is the story of Peter, after Jesus had risen from the dead. And Tabitha had died, and Peter was in the room, and he came in and he prayed with the dead body, and she came back to life. Awesome story and an awesome miracle. What does that have to do with us? Jesus sent out the disciples 2 by 2 earlier in his ministry, and he told them to go and to heal the sick and to raise the dead and to cast out the sins of those who are repentant. Is that our job too? Is it our job to create miracles in this world? Most of us would say no. That's Jesus' job. Or as most confirmation kids conclude, the miracles happened 2,000 years ago and they don't happen today. I tend to disagree. I think this story is about us as it is about anybody else. And maybe God is calling all of us to do a miracle. To do a miracle today. One of the most powerful miracles that I can think of is the healing of relationships. And God knows that we need to heal relationships, not only within our own families, but within our communities, and within our nation, and within the world. Many years ago, I did some mentoring with a young pastor, and during our discussions, the pastor said that he never spoke to his mother anymore. Thought I'd use this story on Mother's Day. And he began to tell me the story about why he never speaks to her anymore. And then after he told the story, I said, you have to forgive your mom. You have to try to understand why your mom was the way she was, and you have to find forgiveness in your heart. Absolutely not, he said. I will not forgive. And he never came back to see me again. I felt bad about that and questioned my stance, but I firmly believe that we as pastors, that if we don't have peace in our own families, if we cannot forgive our family members, if we cannot forgive our parents for doing what they did, whatever that was, how can we talk to others about that? How can we encourage our own flock to forgive their parents and to forgive their family members if we cannot do that ourselves? God is calling us to do miracles in our lives. And maybe the miracle is to heal the relationships in our own families. And maybe today we have to forgive our mothers or fathers. And when people come into me and talk, and this is one of the huge themes, is family conflict. I begin to ask them the stories. Tell me what it is your parents did to you. And then I immediately go, tell me about your parents' childhood. And you can see the look on their face. Why do we want to talk about that? I want to talk about my relationship with my parents and what they did to me. And I said, tell me about your parents' childhood and what was that like? Tell me about the pain that they experienced in their life. When a person is a difficult person, there is a reason that they are a difficult person. Nobody wakes up in the morning and say, you know what? I think going through life as a difficult person is going to be the best thing for me. That doesn't happen. There is a reason why a person is a difficult person. There is a reason why some people have addictions in their life. They just don't wake up and say, I'm going to become an addict. There are many, many reasons, and many of them are in their childhood. And sometimes I go back multi-generational. Do you know about your grandparents? Do you know about the difficulties of their lives? And usually they know those stories. And when they begin to repeat the stories about the difficulties of the grandparents, the difficult childhood, or what happened to them in Europe before they came over here, about families that were broken apart by the war, by depression, about the death of a mother when a child was young, then I hardly have to say anything. When they hear themselves speak the stories, they begin to understand why their parent was the way they were. And when we can understand, then we can find compassion. And when we find compassion, we can find forgiveness. And then relationships can be restored. Having a grandchild makes you reflect on life. And one thing I want to give thanks to my mother. She probably was much like every mother. There were some times of conflict and difficulties between me and my mother, and there aren't many anymore. But my mother made it an absolute rule, and I remember Grandma had that rule too. Family is family. And it doesn't matter how difficult that person is, family is family, and we live together as one. One of the more difficult family members in my family growing up was my aunt. She came from a different background. She wasn't German, she wasn't Lutheran, and there were grumblings and complaining in the family, and my grandmother stood by her words. And last night, my mom, 98, she went out for supper with the only remaining family member, and that is this person. And they stayed together for 80-some years. This is the gift that God has given us. The message is the miracle. The message that Jesus came to give us is the power of the miracles that can happen in our lives. It's love, understanding, forgiveness, moving forward. And there's another truth about family relationships and difficulties. We cannot ignore the fact that we probably have contributed to the issues and the problems. Sometimes we say things and do things that are misinterpreted by other people. You know how when somebody plays a recording of your voice, you don't believe that that's your voice because you hear it differently? It's the same with our actions and the words that we speak. We think that we're saying something much differently. Somebody might interpret it quite differently. Our children can interpret our words and our actions totally differently than what they were intended. God also gives us the strength and the courage to ask for forgiveness. And when there is a rift between us and other people, we have the courage to stand up and say, you know what? Maybe I have failed. Maybe I have erred, but I always want you to know I erred from a good place. I love you completely and unconditionally. And if I have made a mistake, if I have hurt you, I ask you to forgive me. And I will try not to do it again. It's time for more miracles to happen. To miracles to happen in our families, in this community, and in the country of Canada. Understanding, acceptance, forgiveness, and living together in love. Amen.